We received this story from a viewer, and honestly, when we first read it, we had to pause and read it again. Because what happened to her is both heartbreaking and incredibly powerful. Allison Ramirez came home from Afghanistan, missing her right arm, expecting her family to welcome her back. Instead, her own mother looked at her with cold eyes and said, "A crippled warrior, what use are you now?" For days, they treated her like a burden, a broken thing taking up space in their home. They whispered behind her back, made her feel worthless, and slowly began taking control of everything she had left. Allison said nothing. She watched. She waited, and she let them believe they had won. Then, exactly 10 days after she returned home, 10 black limousines pulled up to their house. Neighbors stopped to stare. Her family froze. A man in a dark suit stepped out, walked straight past her mother, and spoke directly to Allison. One sentence that shattered everything her family thought they knew. Suddenly, the same people who had mocked her, who had called her useless, were scrambling, panicking, trying desperately to undo what they'd done. But it was already too late. Here's what really happened in Allison's own words. Because what her family didn't know was that they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. My name is Allison Ramirez. I'm 37 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was a combat medic with the United States Army serving my 3rd deployment in Afghanistan. I came home missing my right arm, but that wasn't the worst thing that happened to me. The taxi pulled up to the house on a gray Tuesday afternoon. I paid the driver with my left hand, still clumsy, with the motion still forgetting sometimes that my right side ended at the elbow now. The prosthetic was being fitted next month. For now, I just had the empty sleeve pinned to my jacket. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at the house I'd grown up in, the house I'd sent money to for 18 years. I expected my mother to open the door. I expected something. She opened the door when I was halfway up the walk. No hug, no tears. Just a flat look at my arm, or where my arm used to be, and then her eyes went to the duffel bag at my feet. "Where are the military papers?" she said. "Not welcome home. Not, are you okay? Just that." I followed her inside. The house smelled the same. Coffee, an old carpet, and the lavender air freshener she'd used since I was a kid. She walked straight to the kitchen, and I saw it immediately. On the table next to her coffee mug was a torn open envelope. Federal Mail. Veterans Affairs. My name on it. "Mom, that's Federal Mail. You can't open mail that isn't addressed to you." She waved a hand like I was being ridiculous. "I'm your mother. I needed to know what was going on." She picked up the papers and held them out to me, but her eyes were scanning them, even as she did. I saw the exact moment she registered the numbers. $180,000 in retroactive disability compensation. They'd been processing my claim for 5 years, and it all came through at once. $100,000 from TSGLI, the traumatic injury insurance. $400,000 from my life insurance policy paid out because I'd been medically retired. And at the bottom of the letter, the part her finger was resting on, $3,200 a month for the rest of my life. I watched her face change. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief that I'd be taken care of. It was something else. Something calculating. "Are there more documents?" she asked. "I need to see everything. I need to know what we're dealing with here." "We." She said we. I was so tired. The flight from Germany had been 17 hours. I hadn't slept in 2 days. My stump ached a phantom pain that made me want to scream, except I learned a long time ago that screaming didn't help. "I need to rest, Mom." "Of course, honey, of course. You rest. I'll take care of everything." She gathered up the papers, all of them, and tucked them into a folder she pulled from a kitchen drawer, like she'd been waiting for them. "I'll handle all of this. You don't need to worry about anything. You just need to heal." I should have argued. I should have taken those papers back. But I didn't. I went upstairs to my old bedroom and slept for 14 hours. When I woke up, it was Wednesday afternoon. I came downstairs and found my mother at the kitchen table with more papers spread out in front of her. She looked up when I walked in. "Perfect timing," she said. "I have some forms for you to sign. Just routine stuff. Medical consent forms, so I can help with your appointments. You'll have so many appointments, and you shouldn't have to deal with all that paperwork yourself." She pushed the papers across the table. 3 pages stapled together. I picked them up with my left hand and tried to read them, but the words blurred together. I was still exhausted. My head felt stuffed with cotton, and my mother was standing there, pen in hand, smiling at me like she was doing me a favor. "It's just so the doctors can talk to me if you need help," she said. "So I can pick up prescriptions, things like that." I signed. 3 places where she'd put little pencil marks. I didn't read it carefully. I trusted her. She was my mother. That was my first mistake. Over the next week, I started noticing things. Every piece of mail that came to the house my mother opened before I saw it. When I asked about it, she said she was sorting out what was important. When I wanted to call the VA to ask about setting up my bank deposits, she said she'd already handled it. When I tried to log into my bank account, the password had been changed. I updated your security, she told me. I'll write down the new password for you. She never did. On Saturday night, we had dinner with relatives. My aunt and uncle, my cousin Sarah. Everyone made the right noises, said the right things. Thank you for your service. We're so glad you're home. But I noticed they weren't looking at my face. They were looking at my pinned sleeve, and they were looking at my mother. My mother did most of the talking. She talked about me like I wasn't sitting right there. She's not ready to handle complex matters yet, my mother said, cutting her chicken into neat pieces. It's my responsibility as her mother to make sure everything is managed properly. She's been through so much. The last thing she needs is stress. After dinner, my cousin Sarah pulled me aside in the hallway. She was 33, worked as a dental hygienist, had always been kind to me. Allison, she said quietly. I don't know if I should tell you this, but last year your mom had some trouble. Gambling debts. Almost $200,000. We thought she was going to lose the house. She's never said how she paid it off. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. When was this? Last November. Your uncle even offered to help, but she said she'd handle it. That night, after everyone left, I went upstairs and opened my laptop. I logged into my bank account using the password reset function. It took 20 minutes and required me to answer security questions, but I got in. There was $50,000 missing. The transaction was dated 4 days after I'd come home. The memo line read, family loan repayment. I hadn't authorized any loan repayment. I hadn't authorized any transfer at all. I went back through the papers my mother had given me to sign. I found them in a drawer in my room under some old mail. 3 pages stapled together. I read them carefully this time with a flashlight, with my heart pounding. Power of attorney, financial and medical. Giving Margaret Ramirez full legal authority over my accounts, my medical decisions, my benefits. I'd signed my life over to her, and I hadn't even known it. The next morning, I called the VA. I used my cell phone, went outside so my mother wouldn't hear. A woman answered, professional and polite. I need to verify who has access to my account information, I said. There was typing on the other end. Then I show Margaret Ramirez, listed as your authorized representative. That was updated on file last week. Is there a problem, Ms. Ramirez? I hung up without answering. My mother had filed paperwork with the VA. Official paperwork, designating herself as my representative. I'd never approved that. I'd never even seen those forms. I stood in the backyard, phone in my hand, and realized my mother hadn't just taken control. She'd made it legal, and I had no idea how deep this went or how to get out of it. I spent 2 days trying to figure out my next move. I needed to revoke that power of attorney, but I needed to understand what my mother had already done with it. I started going through every piece of paper in the house when she was out. I found bank statements she'd hidden in her bedroom closet. More transfers. $20,000 here, $15,000 there, all labeled as various expenses and loans. On Thursday afternoon, I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard her voice from the living room. She was on the phone and she didn't know I was home. I'd come in through the back door. I stood very still and listened. Marcus, I'm telling you, the POA isn't enough. Her voice was low but clear. She can revoke it any time. We need something permanent. A man's voice came through the speakerphone, older, authoritative. Margaret, I understand your concern. Conservatorship is the answer. If the court grants it, you'll have complete legal control. She won't be able to challenge you. How do we get that? We need medical documentation showing she's incompetent to manage her own affairs. That's where Dr. Carr comes in. Has she completed the evaluation? She's scheduled 3 appointments with Allison. The first one is tomorrow. Perfect. Make sure you document everything in the meantime. Any forgetfulness, any emotional outbursts, any signs of paranoia. If Allison accuses you of taking her money, that's actually helpful. It shows delusional thinking. We build a pattern. I can do that. Good. I've known you 20 years, Margaret. I'm not going to let your daughter destroy the security you've worked for. We'll have the conservatorship in place within 2 months. The call ended. I heard my mother's footsteps moving toward the stairs. I quickly poured my coffee and walked out the back door like I'd just arrived. My hands were shaking so hard I spilled coffee on my shirt. They were planning to have me declared incompetent. Legally incompetent. And they had a psychologist ready to make it happen. The next day, my mother told me she'd made an appointment for me. Just a routine mental health check, she said brightly. All veterans go through this. It's standard procedure. Dr. Carr is very nice. She specializes in PTSD. I didn't argue. I needed to see what this woman would do. Dr. Helen Carr's office was in a medical building downtown. She was in her 50s, professional, with a kind smile that didn't reach her eyes. She asked me to sit down and started with what seemed like normal questions. How was I adjusting? Was I sleeping? Did I have nightmares? Then the questions changed. Do you have trouble remembering things? Appointments? Conversations where you put things no more than anyone else? Do you feel angry often? Irritable? Sometimes. I lost my arm. I think some irritation is normal. Do your family members worry about you? I looked at her. Why would you ask that? It's just a standard question. Family observations can be very helpful. She made a note. Your mother mentioned you've been having some confusion about finances. Is that something you've noticed? My mother said that it's nothing to be ashamed of. Many veterans struggle with executive function after trauma. We just want to make sure you have the support you need. I left that office knowing exactly what she was doing. She was building a file that would say I couldn't take care of myself. That afternoon, I found $200 in cash sitting on the kitchen counter. Just sitting there. I didn't touch it. 3 hours later, my mother came home and immediately went to the counter. That's strange, she said. I left money here for the gardener. It's gone. It's right there, Mom. I can see it. She looked at me with this expression of gentle concern. Honey, there's nothing there. Are you feeling all right? She picked up her phone. I saw the red recording light. Mom, the money is right there. It's okay if you don't remember, sweetheart. Let's just sit down. I think you might be having one of your episodes. I walked out. I couldn't stay in that house another second. I went to a coffee shop and called the VA from a payphone. I needed to verify my benefit status without my mother intercepting. The representative was polite but firm. Ma'am, I can't discuss account details with you right now. Your authorized representative, Margaret Ramirez, called this morning. She informed us you're experiencing a PTSD episode and she's concerned you might try to make impulsive financial decisions. We've placed a notation on your file to route all inquiries through her until you've completed psychiatric evaluation. She can't do that. Those are my benefits. She has legal authority, ma'am. It's in your best interest. We're here to help. I hung up. I was being erased, systematically erased from my own life. The next morning, I tried to access my bank account online. The login didn't work. I called the bank. After 20 minutes on hold, a manager came on the line. Ms. Ramirez, your mother contacted us using her power of attorney. She's placed a protective hold on your account pending medical evaluation for competency. It's for your own protection. I don't need protection. I need access to my own money. I understand this is frustrating, but we have to follow legal documentation. Once you've been evaluated and cleared by a medical professional, we can discuss removing the hold. I had no money. None. I couldn't even buy groceries without asking my mother. I looked up lawyers. Every attorney I called wanted a retainer. $3,000, $5,000. I had nothing. I finally found a legal aid clinic. They told me there was a 6-week waiting list for financial abuse cases. 6 weeks, I need help now. We're understaffed, ma'am. I'm sorry. We'll call you when we have an opening. Every door was closing. The VA wouldn't talk to me. The bank wouldn't help me. I couldn't hire a lawyer. And my mother was telling everyone I was mentally unstable. On Tuesday morning, someone knocked on the door. My mother answered it. I was upstairs, but I heard everything. Margaret Ramirez. Yes, you've been served. I came downstairs. My mother was standing in the doorway holding papers. Her face was carefully neutral, but I saw the satisfaction in her eyes. She handed me the documents. Petition for conservatorship, filed by Margaret Ramirez, petitioner seeking legal guardianship over Allison Ramirez proposed conservaty on the grounds of mental incompetence and inability to manage financial affairs. Hearing scheduled in 6 weeks. My mother looked at me with that same gentle concern. Don't worry, honey, she said. This is just to protect you. I'm doing this because I love you. I looked down at the papers in my hand and realized I had 6 weeks to prove I wasn't crazy. 6 weeks to fight 3 people who had spent weeks building a case against me. 6 weeks before I lost everything forever. I had 6 weeks. 6 weeks to prove I wasn't the broken, incompetent person my mother was painting me as. I started spending my days at the public library, the only place I could go where she couldn't monitor me. I used their computers to research conservatorship law in Texas. I learned that the burden of proof was on the petitioner, that they had to show clear evidence of incompetence. But I also learned that medical testimony carried enormous weight, and that judges tended to err on the side of caution when family members claimed someone was a danger to themselves. On the 4th day, I came home just after 5 in the evening. There were 2 police cars parked in front of the house, lights off, but unmistakable. My stomach dropped. I walked up the driveway and through the front door. The living room looked like a tornado had hit it. The coffee table was overturned. A vase lay shattered on the floor, water spreading across the hardwood. Picture frames had been knocked off the walls. The couch cushions were thrown around. And in the middle of it all, my mother sat on the one remaining upright chair, her hands shaking her face, pale, talking to 2 police officers. She looked up when I walked in. Her eyes widened like she was terrified. "Officers, that's her," she said, her voice trembling. "That's my daughter." Both officers turned to look at me. One was older, maybe 50, with gray at his temples. The other was younger, broad-shouldered, with his hand resting near his belt. "Ma'am," the older officer said to me, "your mother called us because she says you came home earlier, had an outburst, and started throwing things. She says she's afraid of what you might do." I looked around at the destruction, at the overturned furniture, at my mother's perfectly staged performance of fear. "I just got here," I said. "I've been at the library all day." "That's what she said you'd say," my mother said softly. "She doesn't remember. Officer, she has PTSD. She's a veteran. She gets confused and angry, and she doesn't even know what she's doing. I'm terrified for her. I'm terrified for both of us." The younger officer stepped closer to me. "Ma'am, have you been experiencing memory issues, blackouts?" "No, I haven't been here. I was at the library." "Can anyone confirm that?" I thought about the librarian who'd helped me print articles. I didn't know her name. I'd been sitting in the back corner at a computer, anonymous. "I don't know," I said. The older officer exchanged a look with his partner. "Ma'am, your mother has petitioned for conservatorship. We've been briefed on the situation. Given what we're seeing here, we strongly suggest you voluntarily check into a psychiatric facility for evaluation. It would look good for the court, show that you're taking this seriously." My hands were shaking. I clasped them behind my back. "I'd like to call a lawyer." My mother stood up immediately. "Of course, honey. Our family attorney can help. Marcus Webb. He's been helping us with all of this. Let me get his number for you." "I want my own lawyer." The officers looked at each other again. The younger one made a note in his pad. I could see him writing, "Subject remained calm but refused voluntary psychiatric evaluation. Defensive. Denied incident despite evidence." They left 20 minutes later. My mother walked them to the door, thanking them for coming, apologizing for the trouble. When they were gone, she turned to me. "Clean this up," she said. Then she went upstairs. I stood in the destroyed living room and understood exactly what had happened. She'd staged this, all of it. And now there was a police report documenting my violent outburst. The next morning, I found a veterans advocacy organization online. I called them from a payphone outside a gas station. The woman who answered listened to my story and gave me a name, Robert Garrett. He was a lawyer who did pro bono work for veterans, specializing in cases of family exploitation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Elder abuse laws were being used to defend me, a 37-year-old combat veteran. I met Robert at a coffee shop the next day. He was in his 60s, gray-haired, with sharp eyes that didn't miss anything. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "We can fight this, but we need evidence, real evidence." Over the next 3 weeks, we built a case. I went back through every document I could find. I photographed bank statements showing the $50,000 transfer dated 2 days before I'd signed the power of attorney. Robert explained what that meant. If the transfer happened before the POA existed, then someone had forged my signature. That wasn't financial mismanagement. That was fraud. I got copies of the VA correspondence, the envelopes my mother had opened. Federal mail. Opening someone else's federal mail was a crime. Robert told me we were in Texas, a one-party consent state. If I was part of a conversation, I could record it without the other person knowing. It would be admissible in court. I set it up carefully. I waited until my mother was in a good mood, confident until she thought I'd given up. I sat down at the kitchen table with her, my phone in my pocket recording. "Mom," I said, and I made my voice small and defeated. "I don't understand why you're doing this. I just want to know why." She looked at me for a long moment, then she sighed like I was exhausting her. "Allison, that money belongs to this family. I raised you for 18 years. I fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. I have $187,000 in debts that need to be paid. You think you can just walk away with your blood money and start fresh somewhere? That's not how this works. That's my money. I earned it by being your mother." I kept my face neutral. Inside my heart was pounding. She'd just admitted everything. The recording was 18 minutes long, every word clear. Robert made copies. Then he told me we needed to go federal. The VA Inspector General's office investigated fraud involving veteran benefits. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was a federal crime. I met with Investigator Chen at the VA regional office. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with a methodical way of going through documents. I laid out everything. The forged signature on the bank transfer, the opened federal mail, the unauthorized VA representative designation, the recorded confession. Chen went through each piece of evidence slowly. When he finished, he looked up at me. This is federal fraud involving veteran benefits. Title 18 U.S.C. Section 289. We have jurisdiction. He made copies of everything, put them in a federal evidence envelope, and sealed it. Then he handed me his business card. I'll coordinate with the court. On the day of your hearing, I'll be there with documentation from our forensic lab. We'll have a signature analysis, a full report on the financial irregularities, and a criminal referral ready to file. I took the card. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear. Meanwhile, my mother was growing more confident. I heard her on the phone with Marcus 2 days before the hearing. We have Dr. Carr's report. We have the police incident report. We have documented concerning behavior. Marcus, the judge, is going to see a disabled veteran who clearly can't manage her affairs. This is just a formality. On the morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully, professional, calm. I drove to the courthouse alone. Robert was meeting me there. I pulled into the parking lot and my breath caught. 3 vehicles were already parked near the entrance. My mother's car, a black sedan I recognized as Marcus Webb's, and a white government vehicle with federal plates and a small seal on the door. Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Inspector General. Chen was already here. I walked into the courtroom and everything felt surreal. It was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a Texas state flag in the corner. My mother sat at a table with Marcus Webb. She was wearing a navy blue dress, her hair perfect tissues clutched in her hand. When she saw me, she dabbed at her eyes. Robert Garrett sat at the other table organizing files. I took the seat next to him. Behind us in the gallery, I saw Investigator Chen. He gave me a small nod. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Judge Patricia Morrison, according to the nameplate on the bench. She was in her late 50s with reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked at the petition in front of her and then at both tables. This is a hearing on the petition for conservatorship filed by Margaret Ramirez regarding her daughter, Allison Ramirez. Mr. Webb, you may proceed. Marcus stood. He was exactly what I expected. Expensive suit, silver hair, the kind of voice that sounded trustworthy and reasonable. Your Honor, Ms. Margaret Ramirez seeks conservatorship of her daughter, Allison Ramirez, age 37, who recently returned from military service with severe disabilities. Ms. Ramirez has demonstrated an inability to manage her financial affairs, has exhibited concerning behavioral patterns, and requires assistance to protect her from exploitation and poor decision-making. We have substantial documentation to support this petition. He called Dr. Helen Carr first. She took the stand, was sworn in, and folded her hands in her lap, with practiced professionalism. Dr. Carr, Marcus said, you evaluated Allison Ramirez. Can you tell the court your findings? Yes, I evaluated Ms. Ramirez over 3 sessions. She exhibits symptoms consistent with severe post-traumatic stress disorder, including memory difficulties, emotional dysregulation, and impaired judgment. She demonstrated paranoid thinking, particularly regarding her family's attempts to help her. In my professional opinion, she requires assistance with major financial and medical decisions. In your professional opinion, is she capable of managing nearly $700,000 in veteran benefits? No, I believe she would be vulnerable to manipulation or would make impulsive decisions that could harm her long-term welfare. Marcus thanked her and called my mother to the stand. Margaret walked up slowly like she was carrying the weight of the world. She was sworn in. Marcus asked her to explain why she was seeking conservatorship. My mother started crying almost immediately. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears that made her look heartbroken. I just want to protect my daughter, she said, her voice breaking. She's not herself anymore. She came home and she's so different. She's angry. She forgets things. She accuses me of terrible things. I'm terrified she'll be taken advantage of by someone, or that she'll make decisions that will hurt her, and I won't be able to help her because she won't listen to me. I love her. I only want what's best for her. She looked directly at the judge. I'm her mother. I've always taken care of her. I just want to keep her safe. The judge's expression was sympathetic. I felt my chest tighten. This was working. Marcus was winning. Your Honor, Marcus said, we have medical documentation from a licensed psychologist. We have witness testimony from the petitioner. We have police reports documenting a violent incident at the home. All of this confirms that Ms. Ramirez is unable to function independently. We respectfully request the court grant conservatorship to protect her from herself and from those who would exploit her vulnerability. He sat down. I looked at Robert. He squeezed my hand once, then stood. Your Honor, he said, and his voice was calm and clear. We have evidence that this petition is based on fraud, forgery, and the systematic exploitation of a disabled veteran. The judge's expression changed. She leaned forward slightly. That's a serious allegation, Mr. Garrett. Yes, Your Honor, and we can prove every word. He walked to the evidence table and picked up the first document. This is the power of attorney that Ms. Ramirez allegedly signed, giving her mother control over her finances. It's dated March 15th. He held it up so the judge could see. Now here are bank records from the same institution. He placed them on the judge's bench. On March 13th, 2 days before the POA was signed, $50,000 was transferred out of Ms. Ramirez's account. The transfer required her authorization, but the POA didn't exist yet. Marcus stood. Your Honor, this is clearly an administrative error in the dates. Sit down, Mr. Webb, the judge said. She was studying the documents. Robert continued. The only explanation is that someone forged Ms. Ramirez's signature on that transfer authorization, and we know who had the motive and opportunity to do so. He picked up his phone. Your Honor, I'd like to play an audio recording. Texas is a one-party consent state. Ms. Ramirez recorded a conversation between herself and her mother. She was a participant in this conversation. The recording is legal and admissible. He pressed play. My mother's voice filled the courtroom. That money belongs to this family. I raised you for 18 years. I have $187,000 in debts that need to be paid. You think you can just walk away with your blood money and start fresh? That's my money. I earned it by being your mother. I watched my mother's face drain of color. Marcus was very still. The judge's expression had gone from sympathetic to stone. Finally, Your Honor, Robert said, I'd like to call a witness. Investigator Chen stood and walked forward. He presented his credentials to the court. Federal badge, VA Inspector General's office. Mr. Chen, Robert said, what did your investigation reveal? Chen opened a folder. Your Honor, we conducted forensic analysis on multiple VA documents bearing Allison Ramirez's signature. Our lab confirmed that several signatures were forgeries. Additionally, federal mail addressed to Ms. Ramirez was opened by Margaret Ramirez without authorization. This constitutes federal fraud under Title 18, United States Code Section 289. We have prepared a criminal referral. The courtroom was silent. Marcus stood abruptly. Your Honor, I acted in good faith based on information provided by my client. I had no knowledge of any forgery. My mother turned to look at him, and her face transformed. The gentle, concerned mother was gone. What was left was rage. How dare you? She hissed. Her voice was rising. You told me exactly how to do this. You said we needed the conservatorship. You said... The judge slammed her gavel. Mrs. Ramirez, you will be silent or I will hold you in contempt. My mother's mouth snapped shut, but her hands were shaking with fury. Judge Morrison looked at the papers in front of her, then at my mother, then at me. Petition for conservatorship is denied, she said. The power of attorney executed on March 15th is hereby voided due to undue influence and fraudulent execution. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. She looked directly at my mother. Ma'am, you are advised to retain legal counsel immediately. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. People started moving. My mother sat frozen at her table. Marcus was gathering his things quickly, not looking at her. As I walked toward the exit, I saw a man in a suit approach my mother. Mrs. Ramirez, I'm with the district attorney's office. We need you to come to the station for questioning. 3 months later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Ms. Ramirez, this is Assistant U.S. Attorney Davidson. I'm calling to inform you that Margaret Ramirez has been indicted by a federal grand jury on charges of fraud, forgery, and exploitation of veteran benefits. The trial begins next month. We'll need you to testify. I sat down slowly. She's really going to trial. Yes, ma'am. She refused the plea deal. We're taking this to court. The trial didn't last as long as I expected. Once the evidence was presented, forensic reports from the VA lab federal mail fraud charges, the recorded confession, my mother's attorney advised her to take a plea deal. She refused at first. She actually believed she could talk her way out of it. But 3 days into jury selection, she changed her mind. Sentencing day was in a federal courtroom in downtown Houston. I sat in the gallery with Robert Garrett. My mother was brought in wearing a beige prison uniform. She didn't look at me. The judge was a man in his 60s with white hair and a voice that filled the room. He read through the charges, the plea agreement, and then he looked at my mother. Margaret Ramirez, you are hereby sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for fraud under Title 18 United States Code Section 289, conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery of federal documents. You will also be required to pay full restitution of all funds fraudulently obtained. 4 years. She'd be 64 when she got out. Marcus Webb's reckoning came 2 months later. The Texas State Bar held disciplinary proceedings. I didn't attend, but Robert sent me the decision. Attorney Marcus Webb is hereby disbarred from practicing law in the state of Texas for knowingly assisting in a fraudulent scheme against a disabled veteran. He'd never practice law again. Dr. Helen Carr went before the Medical Licensing Board. Her license was suspended for 1 year for failure to conduct adequate due diligence and professional assessment standards. I heard later that other complaints surfaced other cases where she'd provided convenient testimony. The suspension was extended to 2 years. The local news picked up the story. Veteran saves own benefits from family fraud scheme. I didn't give interviews. I didn't want to be a victim on camera. I just wanted it to be over. But it wasn't over. My phone started ringing. Family members I hadn't heard from in years. Voicemails saying they didn't know what my mother was doing, asking if we could talk. Text messages from cousins and aunts suggesting we handle this within the family, asking why it had to be so public. I blocked every number. I sent one message to the family group chat before I left it. I no longer have a family who viewed me as an ATM machine. Do not contact me again. 3 weeks later, an attorney forwarded me a letter from my mother. It had been sent from FCI Waseca, the federal prison where she was serving her sentence. Handwritten. I didn't open it. I wrote return to sender across the front and mailed it back. I changed my phone number. I closed every bank account that had any connection to my mother and opened new ones at different institutions. I moved to Austin, left no forwarding address, and started over completely. 6 months after the trial, I rented a small office space. The sign I had made was Simple Veterans Rights Advocacy Project, founded by Allison Ramirez. I worked with VA investigators, legal aid attorneys, forensic accountants. My focus was helping veterans identify and escape financial exploitation, particularly conservatorship scams and power of attorney abuse. In 6 months, I'd assisted 43 veterans. On a Tuesday morning, a woman walked into my office. She was maybe 30, wearing an army jacket, holding papers that shook in her hands. "Miss Ramirez," she said, "my family filed for conservatorship. They're trying to take my disability benefits. Everyone says I need to accept it because family knows best. But I found your article online about what happened to you." I took the papers from her and started reading. The attorney's letterhead looked familiar. Different name, same law firm Marcus Webb had worked for. The petition used the exact same language, the same tactics my mother had employed. I looked up at her. "Sit down," I said. "I know exactly what you're facing, and I know exactly how to fight it." She sat, and I began to tell her how we were going to win. Margaret Ramirez is currently serving her sentence at FCI Waseca. Marcus Webb has not practiced law since his disbarment. Dr. Helen Carr's license suspension was extended to 2 years after additional complaints emerged. The Veterans Rights Advocacy Project has assisted over 200 veterans and successfully blocked 89 fraudulent conservatorship attempts. I testified before Congress in 2026 on veteran financial exploitation reform. The fight continues, but now I'm the one with the power, and I use it to protect those who served. Allison's story reminds us that sometimes the people who should protect us are the ones we need protection from. But it also teaches us something powerful. Your worth is not defined by what others take from you, but by what you refuse to let them destroy. Family is supposed to be a source of love and support, but when that bond is broken by greed and manipulation, we have every right to walk away and build something better. Allison didn't just survive her mother's betrayal, she transformed her pain into purpose, helping hundreds of veterans who faced the same nightmare she did. That's the real victory, not just winning in court, but choosing to use your scars to heal others. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss stories like this. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to set boundaries with toxic family members? What would you have done in Allison's situation? Your perspective matters, and sharing your story might help someone else who's going through something similar. Thank you for watching, and remember, you always have the right to protect yourself, even from family.